Mystery Blur.
Hello and welcome to Screen Slurps, the movie review podcast where we discuss the good, the bad, and the savage in the world of cinema. I'm Adam Meisner.
And I'm Laura Herlocker.
And this week, we're taking you to the best place in the world, hell!
I thought you were going to say Disney World.
Well, I mean, isn't that the same as hell?
Probably. It's hot. There's lots of people that annoy you.
I'll be completely honest, I've actually never been to Disney World.
I've been once.
Man.
I was young, though. Like, I don't really remember it.
We're both missing out.
Maybe we'll do that for our honeymoon.
After we get married, we'll just
go to
fly
Disney
on
World.
over.
I went to Universal. Universal's a lot of fun. I mean, you got Harry Potter World.
I know, that seems
You've
like
got the Mummy
adult
ride.
rendition of
But
Disney
you know,
World.
randomly, at Universal, they have like the Simpsons area. They're replacing that with Bob's Burgers.
Oh, yes.
Which I'm okay. I mean, I wish they would keep, though. They had like the like grocery store or the convenience store, and they had like where you could get like Duff beer, and they had a ride that was like you sat in a car and it was a big screen, like this weird 3D thing. That ride made me so sick. So I'm okay with that ride disappearing, but it will be sad to see all of the Simpsons stuff go.
Yeah, that's too bad.
But I do love Bob's Burgers.
I can understand, though, you know, in the contemporary time that we're living in, I guess I can imagine most people are really just picking up on Bob's Burgers. They're really getting hooked on Bob's Burgers.
How relevant is Simpsons still? Like, I know it's still on, but do a lot of people still watch it?
I think that people our age might still enjoy The Simpsons or might still look back on classic episodes of The Simpsons, and The Simpsons may still try and stay contemporary, but I hate to say it, but I think it's been kind of replaced by Bob's Burgers now. Bob's Burgers is kind of
and Family Guy.
Yeah, Family Guy's been around just about as long as The Simpsons, really.
No.
I mean, Family Guy popped in the 90s.
No. It's been on that long?
Yeah.
Wow. Seth MacFarlane's been around that long?
It's kind of offensive.
What do you mean?
Like, yeah, he's been around that long. So have we.
Well, I know we have, but I mean, I didn't know he was like in the spotlight. Wow, 1999. Wow. I'm amazed. Anyway.
Laura's learning new things every day, as are we. You know, let's go back to what I first said in this episode when I said that we're all going to hell. What I was trying to say was we're talking about Hellboy this week.
So really, it's like we escaped from hell.
Hello, Hellboy. Come on, people. If you haven't heard of Hellboy, most people haven't. So we're going to teach you.
I thought you were going to be like, then you're dumb. But you're like, you're in the same boat as most of the world. So let us tell you about this obscure movie. You're really throwing me like curveballs this evening.
It's true. Anyways, Hellboy, the film that Guillermo Del Toro directed back in 2004.
If Guillermo Del Toro made a Marvel movie.
That already is hard to believe, but
That's what it is.
I'm impressed. We're going to be talking all about that in great detail this episode, this week. But before we get into that, we're going to be talking all about our side slurps. That's right, our side slurps. If this is the first time you're listening to our show, our side slurps are the things that we have done other than, well, watch Hellboy this week, but watch the movie that we'll be talking about on our show. So things like watching other TV shows, other films, maybe even watching snakes in the desert or watching dolphins jump through hula hoops. You never know. We're hard to predict sometimes, especially me this week. I'm on a roll of randomness.
I think so. God.
Laura, what have you been up to this week?
Well, I have watched a plethora of spooky movies this past week. So, and nothing really new. It's a lot of stuff that we've seen before. So the original Halloween, we watched that. I watched Psycho. I watched House of a Thousand Corpses.
Damn.
I've been on spooky movie spree
Spooky movie spree.
I do it every year. I was just telling Adam, I actually keep a list of all of my like spooky movies and I track which ones I watch each year. I've only done it for the last 3 years, so I have 3 years worth of tracking of all of the movies I watched during spooky season. I love it.
I mean, I tried to get you to watch Halloween Town, but you were
We did watch Halloween Town.
I feel like you were trying to take a snooze when we were watching. I just
finished it the other day, so that's another one. I watched Halloween Town.
At least you finished it.
I finished it. I also, though, unrelated, not a spooky movie, I watched Vengeance with BJ Novak from The Office. And it also has like random cameos by John Mayer and
I enjoyed that. And that was right in the beginning of the movie too.
And Ashton Kutcher. It's a very interesting little indie film about BJ Novak who wants to like create a podcast. So he's trying to think of a good idea for a podcast. And it turns out this woman that he hooked up with was killed or died. And the family thought that he was like her boyfriend. So he goes down to Texas and kind of gets wrapped into this whole world and, you know, wants to create a podcast about like how she was murdered, you know, because true crime podcasts are all the rage. It was an interesting movie. Adam, we talked about this. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great. It was like a pretty average indie film, I would say.
Not going to lie, it truly reminds me of when I studied podcasting in grad school. And I listened to a handful of true crime podcasts when in grad school, and they were very motivating sort of pieces, very motivating series in comparison to some of the other podcasts that I listened to, because I listened to multiple different genres to really see how different popular podcasts made themselves popular. And I thought it was really interesting to see that I went from listening to a true crime podcast that's audio only and then seeing BJ Novak's film where you see a person do it for real.
Right, like interviewing.
And I understand that BJ Novak's film isn't necessarily a documentary. However, it is very much like the real thing where, you know, a person is trying to figure out the subject matter and go across the United States traveling and go from place to place. And I gotta say, it is very much what you do when you're making a podcast. My thesis when I was in school was a podcast, and it's just like, yeah, you gotta go places with a microphone and do what you gotta do.
Yeah. So we watched that. I also, for my book this last week, I read a spooky book. So I read The Death of Jane Lawrence. And it's inspired by Crimson Peak, which is a Guillermo Del Toro.
Keeping the Guillermo
film.
going.
I've got a theme going here. The book was good. Again, I think I've been on a rut lately, and I've been reading a lot of books that I've been rating like 3 stars. So I'm trying to get out of that rut. But I liked the book. It was a little dense at times, and not dense in that word. I guess the word I want is just, it was a little dry at times, and it couldn't really keep me invested. But still, you know, Crimson Peak, a nice little spooky horror story. I felt like it was on brand for this season, so that's why I read it. And I've already read, like, I'm caught up on the series to where it's at, but the volume 3 of Lore Olympus was published in print. So I bought that and I just read through that yesterday. Adam got to get a glimpse of that web series.
Hey, the artwork in that is beautiful.
It's so good. So essentially it's a Hades and Persephone retelling. And those of you who don't know, Hades, obviously in Greek mythology, is the lord of the underworld, and Persephone becomes the queen of the underworld. And so it's the story of like how they meet and their relationship. And it's a web series, so it's on Webtoons, but it's so popular that they are publishing it in print. So that's why now we're getting all of the early chapters in physical form. And I'm very happy about it because, as Adam said, it is stunning. The artwork is beautiful. The writing is so good. It deals a lot with like trauma and like some really heavy shit, but it's good.
Yeah, I haven't started reading any of those comics or books that, you know, put them all together yet. But I got to say, the artwork does remind me very much of Inside Out from Pixar.
Yeah, that's what you said. It's just because each person's like a different color. And they all have this vibe, and they're kind of just like this ethereal looking kind of thing. It's gorgeous. It's really, really nice artwork. And yeah, I think that's the most of my spooky stuff. Well, it is my spooky side stuff. What have you been up to this week, Adam?
You know, my memory is a blur of what my side slurps were this past week, but the biggest thing that comes to mind that I have been doing or have already done this past week was that Laura and I went to the bookstore this past week and we picked up some books.
My favorite place.
You know, Laura picking up books, she's got a whole collection going on, and she'll tell you every single one that she's picked up because she's probably already read all of them. However, I picked up a book that I bought and have already read because, well, it wasn't too long. However, it was something that could probably give me nightmares, and I'm very happy that I read it. And it was entitled The Call of Cthulhu by H.P. Lovecraft. Short story, and it was in comic book form. And I thought it was very cool. And I do believe that the comic version that was created was a little bit bent a little bit in
like
terms
abridged?
Yeah, a little bit changed a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So a little bit altered from the original H.P. Lovecraft version. And the author of the comic book version had mentioned in the introduction that he changed the ending ever so slightly. And he had reason so to do that, which he also mentioned in the introduction. So if you do read the comic book version that was made, he does explain why he kind of changed the ending a little bit. He doesn't tell you exactly what the ending is in the introduction either. Mm-hmm. He just kind of explains why it was bent a little bit to changing it a little. However, it just makes me want to read the original H.P. Lovecraft version of The Call of Cthulhu now.
Which you also bought this
weekend. I also bought the same time I bought the comic book version. And so I also bought a compilation of H.P. Lovecraft's The Call of Cthulhu and other short stories by H.P. Lovecraft. And now I just want to read all of these short stories by H.P. Lovecraft. And I'm just going to get a bunch of nightmares now about these fantasy creatures, particularly Cthulhu, because it's just this octopus-like demon god.
But he's like an alien, right?
Yeah, he's an alien that lives underwater and comes to life and resurfaces when the stars align perfectly. And it's like this giant octopus god like creature, basically. I guess it doesn't have to be gigantic though, because there has been dare I say retellings of the story or recreations of the story through video games and things like that. And particularly in Baldur's Gate 3 they use Cthulhu, and he's like human size essentially.
Right.
So he's not ginormous in Baldur's Gate 3, at least not yet that I know of. So
well, maybe he can change sizes. It kind of gives me the vibe of like a kraken. Mm-hmm. He's like a humanoid kraken.
Yeah. So I think it's really cool and very interesting to read about, and I'm very curious to see what other kind of stories.
I'm just so proud that you read a book. You read a whole book in one day.
I think fantasy fiction is really cool.
Yeah.
And I like classic fantasy stories like this. Especially, I always thought Cthulhu was cool. And so to read a story about it where people are freaking out like, this octopus thing that has cults following it. I'm like, well, that sounds cool.
Octopus and cults? You got me hooked.
This octopus humanoid? Of course I'm going to read about this.
It's just funny because the other author I feel like you really like is Kurt Vonnegut. And he is like not. I mean, I guess I was going to say he is not fantasy, but he is science fiction-y. So I get that.
Yeah, he kind of goes back and forth a little bit.
Yeah, he's definitely more like satirical and political.
I like that too.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Two sides of the coin.
Yeah. So that was one major thing that I did this past week. And then other than that, as Laura had mentioned about the movies that we've been watching, there's been a big handful of movies. And I'd like to remember some of the other ones that we had watched.
Hellraiser.
That's right. We watched Hellraiser this past week. We might
review that, though, so we'll pass on it.
Yeah, Hellraiser was a very crazy one, and especially for the month of October and spooky season was not at all what I had expected for that movie. I thought it was going to be something completely different, but after watching the movie now, I'm thinking, wow. Speaking of nightmares, they just get even creepier. First, I talk about an octopus god, and now after thinking about Hellraiser.
Well, I feel the same about like House of a Thousand Corpses. That movie was messed up. We watched a lot of messed up movies.
Yeah, Rob Zombie's House of a Thousand Corpses. That is a strange one. So, those were a few things I did this past week. And it brings us all back to the first thing I mentioned in this episode, hell. That's right. And nothing goes greater in hell than the Hellboy himself.
Wait, I have some movie news.
Oh, please tell me.
You're going to be happy about this, Adam. I read that in the works, there is another Kenneth Branagh Poirot Agatha Christie movie.
What?
Yeah. They're doing A Haunting in Venice. So he once again is reprising his role as Poirot. And I am quite excited about it because as listeners, if you've listened to other episodes, I mean, even this episode, you can tell I'm a spooky bitch. I love Agatha Christie. I think she is one of the best writers, like classic writers. I love everything that she wrote. And so I'm a big fan of the Poirot movies. Even though they may not be the best movies, I still like them a lot.
Well, that is some interesting news, and I think those movies are really something to watch and enjoy. Particularly, his mustache is something to watch and enjoy.
The double
handlebar.
The other movie news is something, Adam, I was just talking to you about, actually. Not supposedly, but there's this new horror film out. I think it's called The Terrifier or Terrifier 2 or something. And people are saying it is so graphic, like Saw times a gazillion. Like it's so graphic, it's so gory that people are watching it in theaters and they're like passing out in the theaters. So they have to call ambulances for these people. People are like puking from the movie. People are having to leave the movie. Like supposedly it is intense.
Okay, that already gives me something to conversate about because I don't know if it's just me going to film school and having experience watching all kinds of David Lynch films and even more than David Lynch. There's even more grotesque films out there, obviously, than what David Lynch has made. And that's nothing on David Lynch. I have a great love for David Lynch's film work, but he's got some weird scenes out there. If you watch Eraserhead.
I think this movie is just very graphic in like how they kill people and like torture people.
I don't feel like it's something I guess I'll have to see for myself.
I don't know if I could watch it. I think it would make me sick. Saw makes me sick. Man. Maybe we'll watch it and see how well I do.
We'll need an experience and a retelling of what it's like. I don't want to see it in
theaters, though, because I don't want to puke in a movie theater.
Boy. And then I sit there watching Saw 3 like, okay, whatever.
Not even bothered.
Yeah, whatever. Saw 3 with all the pigs just grinding into the thing. Like,
Ugh. Anyway, those are my two big movie news.
I got some movie news for you, too.
Give it to me.
I guess Dan Levy sets film directorial debut at Netflix with his film Good Grief.
I love him so much. I love him and his dad, Eugene. I loved him in like Best in Show. And then the two of them, Schitt's Creek is like one of the best TV shows ever written.
Yeah, he goes from Schitt's Creek to Good Grief. Like,
I will watch this. When is it coming out? What is it about? Do we know anything about it?
I don't know when it's supposed to premiere, but it's going to Netflix. So
all right, I'm writing
maybe
it's
on Netflix now. No, it doesn't look like it has a set date yet. It just looks like he's got the cast picked.
But so here's like the synopsis for the movie, and it sounds like it's going to be kind of sad. So it centers around Mark, who chose to distract himself from the loss of his mom with a comfortable marriage. But when his husband also dies unexpectedly, Mark is forced to finally confront the grief he's tried so hard to avoid, sending him and his two closest friends on a Parisian weekend of self-discovery. So I think it's going to be a comedy. I mean, it's Dan Levy, but it's definitely going to have some like heartfelt, emotional bits to it.
Right.
As Schitt's Creek, Schitt's Creek, I think, leans a little more towards the funny, but it has some really, I take that back. It does have some like really emotional and like meaningful and poignant like parts to it and like meaning behind it. So I can see that transferring to like what that plot was I just read.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on board. I'll watch it. We'll review it.
Well, that's the film news that I have for this week.
Let's get to the movie.
Let's go to hell.
But he doesn't go to hell. He comes from hell.
I know, but I'm saying we should go to hell. We have to open the portal so that we can get him out of there.
That's right. I need Rasputin. Rasputin. I always think of Anastasia. The animated film is like one of my favorite movies. And there's like a line where Bartok is like, Rasputin. And that's what I always think of when I hear his name.
This week, we're talking about the movie Hellboy from 2004. Directed by Guillermo Del Toro. Screenplay was written by Guillermo Del Toro, and it's based on Hellboy, the comic, by Mike Mignola. Produced by Lawrence Gordon, Mike Richardson, and Lloyd Levin. Starring Ron Perlman, Selma Blair, Jeffrey Tambor, Carol Roden, Rupert Evans, John Hurt, and many more.
You didn't even name the most important one.
Well, go
Doug
for it.
Jones.
Mr. Jones. And that's where I stop. Cinematography by Guillermo Navarro. Edited by
name?
all the Guillermos.
All the Guillermos are on this movie.
Edited by Peter Amundsen. Music by Marco Beltrami. Production companies include Columbia Pictures, Revolution Studios. It was released on March 30th of 2004 on... Oh, this is in Man Village Theater. And then the completely released in the United States in April 2nd of 2004. And the budget was 60 to 66 million, but the box office number is approximately 99.8 million.
Woo!
So pretty good return on that one,
Made
baby.
its money.
Yeah. So good job, Hellboy.
Good job.
Fisticuffs.
Guillermo.
Pound it, baby. I say that only because Hellboy's got that giant rock fist, so...
I know, but why? I want to know why
he'd beat the shit out of me if I pounded it with him. He'd just break my hand off.
Yeah. Why does he have a rock hand? It's never explained.
He's got that rock fist.
I need a reason. Why?
I think they did explain it at one point. But
was I just lost?
I think so.
Well, I mean...
Me too, but...
Yeah, I was about to say, I'm not surprised. Anyway, do you have a synopsis of this movie, Adam?
Yes, I do.
Ooh, you got one.
So, let me tell you the plot of this week's film in a nice little paragraph. At the end of World War II, the Nazis attempt to open a portal to a paranormal dimension in order to defeat the Allies. What a name. The Allies.
I was like, what? What name are you talking about?
Not the Nazis, the Allies. You know, it's like we've got the Nazis, like the organization, like in Germany. You're not encompassing an entire country. You've just got the Nazis there. And then the Allies.
Oh, yeah, because the Allies are like the U.S., England, everyone else that was involved in the war, pretty much.
So the world and then the Nazis, basically.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. Why is it always... We're getting really sidetracked, though. Why is it always Nazis? Like, I know they're bad, obviously, the Nazis, but like... You know, Indiana Jones, like the villain or what is it about these kind of action films that always have Nazis being the bad guys?
It's always in the superhero comics too.
Yeah.
It's always the Nazis. Well, I mean,
because even like Captain America, like Red Skull, he worked for the Nazis. Like it's just like they always. I feel like all these comic or superhero or actiony movies, Nazis are always the villain, as they should be. But I'm just saying, why don't they come up with a different like fake group or something?
Well, you know, I'll have to do more research, but I think also around the time of World War II and shortly after World War II was when a lot of these comic books were being pumped out.
Oh, so they were just kind of obviously using real world. That makes sense. You're probably right. It probably is because when these comics were being written, it was just after the war.
Mm-hmm.
You're a smart man.
So, yeah, I'll have to
continue with your
I'll
plot.
have to look into that more, but I think that
you're probably right.
But regardless of that, so the Nazis are trying to open a portal to a paranormal dimension in order to defeat the Allies, but are only able to summon a baby demon who is rescued by Allied forces and dubbed, quote, Hellboy, who was performed by Ron Perlman. 60 years later, Hellboy serves as an agent in the Bureau of Paranormal Research and Defense, where he, aided by Abe Sapien, who was played by Doug Jones, a merman with psychic powers, and Liz Sherman, played by Selma Blair, a woman with pyrokinesis, protects America against dark forces. And that's it. That is the movie, basically. So, with all of that in mind, we'll take it back to the beginning of this movie. Essentially, as I had mentioned in that plot, you've got the Nazis. They are going crazy, and they are trying to open a portal.
But here's the thing. It's not just the Nazis. It's the Nazis plus Rasputin. And Rasputin, if those of you listening don't know, is like the baddie from Russia. You know, Anastasia, who obviously he killed, like, well, you know, he was the baddie essentially with the last, like, czar of Russia. And, you know, the whole reason their family kind of fell apart and everything. So my question is, again, I feel like I have lots of questions coming out of this. How the hell did Rasputin end up with the Nazis? I'm pretty sure he was killed, but they must have been like, he didn't die or he was resurrected by the Nazis or something.
Are we talking in the very beginning of the movie, or?
Yeah, the guy, the main Nazi guy, that's Rasputin. Mm-hmm. Not the cyborg one. Mm-hmm. The, like, human guy.
The main guy.
Yeah, that's Rasputin.
I think they had resurrected him, like, later in the
Well, yeah, because he gets sucked into the portal.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, in the opening. So Hellboy gets out and Rasputin gets, like, sucked into the portal. Mm-hmm. But he comes back later. But yeah, that guy, that's Rasputin.
Rasputin.
Yeah.
But yeah, and he's trying to basically destroy the entire world through a gateway to hell, essentially.
Pretty much. And with him, like I said, he's got this, like, cyborg being.
That's a question of its own already. Like, how do they have this, like, cyborg, like, kinetic man?
Yeah, and then there's, like, two women, right? I'm trying to remember.
Well, you know what? I can already answer the question I just made. How do they have a cyborg kinetic man? Because Guillermo Del Toro is directing the movie. That's how. Because
yeah. Well, and it's based on a comic, so obviously there's some leeway.
Yeah,
we got leeway on things.
But I mean, Guillermo Del Toro is like the voodoo god of all things creature-like.
Yeah,
and for there to be this cyborg man who's got this, like, turnstile on the front of his body where
he's like a clock. Like, that's what I was asking you. And,
right.
Like, it sounded like he was ticking. So I was like, is this man like a clock?
I gotta say that's already cool with the sound design aspect. Character. He sounds like he's the master of all things steampunk, just walking around. Character. He just turns his little turnstile clock mechanism in the front, and then he's like, and then he can just kung fu everybody. I mean, it's not kung fu, but yeah, it's like this crazy, just like, I don't know, like butterfly knives, basically. Yeah. Like, just
yeah, he's crazy. But so we've got them going there, and then with the allies, we have Broom, who's played by John Hurt, and he is like the paranormal expert. And it's just funny because he's trying to explain to all these, like, men, you know, the U.S. like army men, being like, you know, it's paranormal, like, and they're just like, what are you talking about?
They are freaking out when Hellboy shows up. Well, okay, so Rasputin gets sucked into this portal.
Portal closes. They're able to destroy the portal.
And so they think that they're completely successful because Rasputin's gone and the Nazis are wiped out. And then they notice there is this tiny demon frolicking around in this intro scene, and they think they've got to shoot it because it's, you know, this little miniature version of Satan.
But Broom is like, no.
Yeah, Broom, no, we can't.
Let me give it a, what was it, a
Babe Ruth.
Oh, a Babe Ruth.
Yeah, no, I have to give it this Babe Ruth bar.
Why do you think he chose a Babe Ruth bar? Do you think it's because of the Goonies? Isn't Sloth given a Babe Ruth bar? Like, Chunk gives him a Babe Ruth bar?
That's a good question.
Things to think about.
And he's just carrying around two of them, too.
Yeah, why did he have Babe Ruth bars?
He gives him one entire Babe Ruth bar. It's not even a chunk of a Babe Ruth either. Maybe
two of them. Yeah,
in
he had two of
Goonies,
them.
does he give him an entire bar though, or does he just give him like a piece of it?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I don't remember that specific.
Because in this movie, he gives him the entire candy bar, and this is a baby. This is a infant demon.
He loves it though.
He gives him the entire candy bar, and that demon just gobbles the entire bar.
And then they adopt the baby.
And then he's like, "Oh, I'll give him another one." He's just got an entire candy bar up his sleeve.
We're gonna name him.
We're gonna name him Hellboy,
which is such a dumb name.
Hey, don't be harsh.
I'm sorry. Oh, he comes from hell and he's a little boy.
They couldn't name him like Charlie or something.
Yeah. What about Rupert?
Rupert.
Vincent. Like, so many name options.
They just took out a guy named Rasputin, and now you want to name him Rupert?
They're different.
Rasputert?
You said it in such Rasputert.
So, Hellboy. Yeah, that's a good one.
He's from hell and he's a boy. He's Hellboy. Well, ladies and gentlemen, then we get a 60-year time jump.
So Hellboy comes into their lives as their child, and we jump 60 years later. And Broom is Hellboy's father. As we move 60 years later, Hellboy himself has hardly aged a bit. We get explained. I mean, he's aged, yes.
He's an adult man. He's not a baby anymore.
That's true, but they say that he ages like dog years.
Yeah. I was gonna say, he doesn't seem like he's like 60 years old.
So he's still moving around pretty well for himself.
And essentially, the CIA has this like separate division that's all about like the supernatural and the paranormal. What was it called, Adam? It's called the Bureau for Paranormal Research and Defense. And Broom is like the head of this division, and they have Hellboy. But he's like a secret. The world doesn't know about him, but there's been sightings of him, right? He's kind of like Bigfoot or Mothman. Yeah, right. There'll be like tabloids where they're like, Hellboy. Yeah. But essentially, he just like helps them out by beating baddies, supernatural baddies.
Yeah. And even though he does beat the bad people when he does go out in the world, people still think he's the bad guy.
Right. Well, it's the whole vigilante thing, kind of, right? You know, like with Batman, right? They're like, is Batman the bad guy?
Yeah.
The good guy. You got that kind of elusiveness going on.
Exactly.
But I do feel like, as you were saying, you know, he ages in dog years. It does feel like Broom treats him like he's still like a teenager, you know, because he has to have like a minder. He has to have a CIA agent who's essentially his babysitter, which is where John Myers comes into the picture. So he is an FBI agent, and he has been transferred to this bureau to essentially be Hellboy's babysitter.
Right.
To like make sure people don't see him, to make sure he behaves and follows the rules.
And even though Hellboy completely tells him like, I'm an adult and leave me alone.
Right. But he's got to do his job.
Right.
And along with Hellboy, as you already mentioned, we have the like amphibious
Abe
merman,
Sapien.
Called Abe Sapien, named that because they found him like the day that Abe Lincoln was killed, right? That's why they named him Abe. Played by Doug Jones, which I think for a second we should just give like a little moment to Doug Jones, because that man, I feel like he is so underappreciated for what he has given us in the film world. I mean, he is in Hocus Pocus. He is in most Guillermo Del Toro movies as like the baddie, or not the baddie, but as the monster, you know, so like Shape of Water in this one. He's also in, trying to think what else. Oh, he was in Pan's Labyrinth. Like he was in Buffy. Like he always plays kind of these like monsters, creatures. He's just so good at creating these beings. So credit to Doug Jones.
And yeah, from there, we really just begin to move into the movie where one of the Paranormal Bureau men gets sort of routed from his job, and he gets murdered by our clockwork Nazi man, and blood gets spilled into the ground, into this, I will say, very cool looking set piece. It's really mapped out nicely, but to be completely honest, no human is going to bleed that much into the ground and make that much of a pool of blood into the ground to reincarnate our old pal, what was his, Rasputin.
Rasputin. But before that, we see the creature thing, right? That's why the FBI guy dies, because they're trying to defeat Samael, or whatever the name is, the creature, where when we learn that when he dies, he like replicates. So 2 new beings are born. And that's kind of like the main creature that Hellboy is trying to fight. But while they're down there fighting it, that's when the FBI guy is killed. And yeah, the blood. And then Rasputin comes back.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of 2 things happening at the same time, I think. It's like Hellboy is trying to take out the Samael thing, and then the other new Nazi people are bringing back Rasputin, and then Rasputin kind of explains as he comes back to life, not at the same time, but when he comes back to life and we see in scenes that he's like, Samael.
Yeah,
like,
essentially he wants to like take over the world, destroy the world and using Samael.
That's basically how he's going to do it, is you kill 1, then 2 come back, you kill another, 2 more come back.
Right. It's like what is it in Greek mythology that like Hercules fights? Is it like the Hydra or something?
Where I think so, where you cut off one head, then 2 pop out.
I think it's the Hydra. Yeah, so kind of the same idea.
Yeah. And then with Rasputin, he's trying to persuade Hellboy throughout the movie in just a few scenes. There's not very many of them where you see the 2 of them interact, but in a few different scenes when they interact, he's basically telling Hellboy, like, this isn't your life. You want to go back to where you were before. You want to know your real name.
He needs Hellboy to like unlock, the thing to bring about the end of the world. So trying to turn him to their side. But luckily for us and for the world, he was raised by Broom and he has a conscience.
Yeah.
And he's also in love with a woman.
The
Liz, who we haven't
woman.
really. So Liz actually left. So she's no longer with the Bureau. She left because she put herself essentially into like therapy and rehab to try and help her control her kinetic abilities. And so, but Hellboy sneaks away so that he can go see her from time to time and check in on her and things like that. And I think then they eventually convince her to come back, because she kind of comes back then to help them fight off Samael and Rasputin. And sorry, and she gets a little flirty with Myers, the FBI agent, and you can tell Hellboy is not happy with that.
No, not at all. He kind of stalks them on their little date together.
Yeah, following them around. He's like, stay away from my woman. Pretty much.
You don't want to piss off Ron Perlman.
That's one thing I want to say, though. I was getting vibes from the movie that, like, my vibe was like, sorry, I'm like coughing. Okay. I was getting vibes throughout the movie that Liz was kind of seeing Hellboy as like a father figure a little bit. So then when I realized, no, it's actually a romance, I was a little creeped out, if I'm being honest.
I thought that was kind of funny that you were like, no, he's like her dad. And it's like, do I need to clue you in here on what's going on?
I don't like it.
Ron Perlman's everybody's dad, so.
Yeah. I'll talk about Ron Perlman's acting once we're done with the movie. I'll give it a minute. So we've got the gang all together. They know about Samael, and they realize what they have to do. And they realize that there's. How do they even realize it? Was I spacing? How do they know that they're all the eggs that they need to go destroy?
Wasn't it Abe Sapien basically, or
he like goes underwater and finds them all? Yeah, you're right. So they realize they need to like destroy all these eggs. So they end up in Russia, right? Like where they're hiding out.
Yeah.
Am I totally wrong?
No, I think you're right. Or it's just like when Ron Perlman's also fighting the Samaels and he's getting like ganged up on near the end of the movie. They kind of go below the
yeah. So
that's near the end of the movie.
He goes but earlier they go to destroy the eggs, and that's when the cyborg guy pretends to be like dead. And so they take him and he can be within the Bureau, and then he brings himself back to life and he kills Broom.
Yeah.
And that's where then things all kind of
right. I don't think they ever really I don't know if they ever really knew that there was like all the eggs that they had to completely wipe out, but they were just like, let's go kill the
knew where they needed to
Samaels.
look.
Yeah. And then as they go to kill the Samaels, then Hellboy's like, here's one right here. I'll take it out. And like, here's another one. And he's like going to kill the two of them. But as he kills one, then like the two more hatch and they're all like ganging up on Hellboy.
Right.
And then Liz is like, I need you to slap me to...
Oh, well, that's at the very end, what you're talking about.
I know, but that's how they like get the eggs.
Yeah,
is like...
yeah, you're right. But before we get there, Broom dies.
Yes.
And Jeffrey Tambor, the actor, his character, like takes over their little division. But again, yes, they realize that they need to go to Russia because that's where they are in like Rasputin's mausoleum. So they head over there. And while there, that's where they find the lair. So they find the cyborg guy and he's dead, right? They kill him. And then, yes, they're in that room with all the eggs. And that's when Liz is like, slap me. So she gets angry and they can blow up all the eggs.
Slap me.
Slap me. And then they like get knocked out and get captured. This movie, I don't remember, which is bad because I'm like, what the hell even happened in this movie?
Yeah, come on, Laura.
They get captured after that.
They do.
After they destroy the
Hellboy
eggs.
and Liz get captured, and so does the other FBI agent.
Myers.
Yeah, Myers.
And that's when Rasputin, like, kills Liz, essentially, right? He, like, takes her soul.
It's, he's making an offer with Hellboy where he's saying, open the gate or I'm gonna take, like, Liz's soul.
So Hellboy starts, his horns first, like regrow, right?
Yeah, first Hellboy is like, nah, I'm never going to open the gates. And so Rasputin's like, fine, then I'm going to take Liz's soul. And so then he's like, and Hellboy's like, no! And so then he's like, open the gate or like, and if you open the gate, then you can have Liz's soul back, like all to yourself. Like you can like have... she's all back to you, and then he starts to grow his horns back, and then he's going to start. So he starts to
open it, but then Myers shows up, and it was like, "This isn't who you are, Hellboy. Yeah. Remember your father."
I mean, Myers is there, and he's trying to like free himself a little bit, but like he can't really free himself at all. It's just like he's trying to like get closer, but he's like, "This is what you just said."
Remember your father.
Yeah, remember your father. Like you called him dad.
Right.
And then Hellboy, he opened like one of the locks to
but he like
the gate,
reseals it,
but then
and
as he's about to open the other one, then he reseals it.
And he kills Rasputin. Stabs him with a horn.
Yeah, he breaks his horns off himself, and then stabs Rasputin. And then he takes Liz and then tries to basically bring her back to life. And I think, he does that. Does. Just fine.
Yeah, because that's like this is the one thing I remember. She's like, how did I come back? And he's like, well, I told them, like, you on the other side, let her go or else I'm coming for you. I was like, this is dumb. And then they make out. Gross. That's the movie, ladies and gentlemen.
I wouldn't say that's the movie, not,
Yes, it all comes down to that end.
It all just comes down to that ending.
The end scene.
That is a different side of Ron Perlman than I'd expect, though, because, I mean, like, that's such, like, a softy Ron Perlman when he's with Liz, just like, well, I told him this, and I brought you back to life.
Yeah, because Ron Perlman's roles, I always think of him in Sin City.
Mickey Rourke is in Sin City.
Why do I keep confusing Ron Perlman and Mickey Rourke? What else is Ron Perlman in? Oh, no.
Sons of Anarchy?
You're telling me he's not in Sin City?
You keep thinking he's Mickey Rourke.
I know. Hey, he's in the new Pinocchio Guillermo Del Toro movie. Oh, and he was in Nightmare Alley. Wow. Does Guillermo del Toro, most directors do this, right? They use the same actors for like everything they do. So Guillermo del Toro just uses Ron Perlman and like everything.
I'm okay with that.
Because he's in Kronos too, right?
Yeah.
So he must really like him. Okay, well, I obviously don't. For some reason, I keep confusing Mickey Rourke and Ron Perlman. So I take back what I said.
Oh, man.
I'm a fool. Anywho, did you know that Guillermo del Toro, like Ron Perlman was his first pick? Like that's who he really wanted to be Hellboy.
I did know that. I did my research and I saw that.
You looked it up.
I thought that was really cool. I thought that was very interesting. because thinking now about the Hellboy remake with David Harbour, it's really hard for me to imagine who else Guillermo Del Toro would have had play Hellboy with this kind of personification of Hellboy.
Yeah, the like snarky, bad, but he's actually really good.
Yeah, and I mean, Ron Perlman's personification of Hellboy is really just this stiff but witty kind of demon, and he's not, it's not like he's showing this like brainy nerdy demon.
Right.
It's just this, he's just a humanoid demon, and when needed he comes to the forefront, and he's got the strength and everything like that. Doesn't talk too much, talks just enough.
I don't know. I will say though, like the delivery of the lines to me, I was saying this to you earlier. The delivery of the lines to me seems like just bad acting. And I think it's just the way Ron Perlman is. And I think it's just what he was going for. But it reminded me of like Roddy Piper trying to give lines in Welcome Hell Comes to Frogtown. Like it's just this weird stilted kind of speaking where it's like he doesn't know what he's doing. Like that's the vibe I was kind of getting from him.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, it just seemed like very minimal line delivery.
Maybe that's what he wanted. And obviously it's what they wanted, because Guillermo wouldn't have given the role to Ron Perlman if he didn't want that. Right.
Yeah, I'm not sure entirely how he would have played the role otherwise.
Mm-hmm. While we're talking about him, fun fact, after all of the makeup was done with putting him, making him Hellboy, the only part of Perlman's body that could actually be seen were his eyelids. The rest of his body is all prosthetics and like covered up.
That's pretty crazy.
Can you imagine how long it had to have taken to like sit in makeup for that?
Yeah.
Miserable.
Can you imagine how long all of the makeup is for all the other Guillermo del Toro
films? Yeah, I know.
Films?
Everything, yeah. Doug Jones, again. He must sit in makeup chairs for a big majority of his time.
Man.
The other fun fact I have is that did you know that Guillermo del Toro opted to do this movie over Alien versus Predator? And this one's going to blow your mind because it blew my mind. Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. Can you imagine a Harry Potter movie done by Guillermo del Toro?
That would be...
I feel like it would be
totally
good.
Different. Yeah.
Like, I feel like it would be good, actually.
That would be nuts.
Like, I'm kind of sad we missed out on that.
Yeah, but then the person that did do Prisoner of Azkaban was Alfonso Cuarón, so I think that's okay.
No, the third one, is when they changed directors and, like, it started to get...
Yeah. But, I mean, having Alfonso Cuarón do it is why it's also good.
Mm-hmm. Those are my fun facts for the movie, though.
I read that Del Toro and Mike Mignola envisioned the film as a Ray Harryhausen film. And so to envision this film as like some classic Ray Harryhausen stop motion film, obviously I don't think they were thinking that this was going to be a stop motion animation film necessarily.
No.
But to think of this film looking like Ray Harryhausen's work a little bit, that's an interesting mental thought to have when making this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I also...
because they probably wanted to give it that kind of comic booky vibe, like making it seem like it is.
And I also read that Guillermo del Toro invited Ray Harryhausen to teach the film's animators what made his effects techniques unique, but apparently Harryhausen declined, feeling that modern films were too violent.
Well, Harry, old man, you gotta get with the times.
Yeah, some interesting stuff that's out there with this. And there were some other things that I read about this as well. Interesting fact I also found was that labyrinths became a motif for the film to represent Hellboy's conflict of, quote, choosing the right path. And apparently this is reflected in the film's opening titles. And Guillermo del Toro had stated that, quote, a labyrinth, it is said, is not a place to be lost, but a place to find yourself.
Ooh.
Which is also very interesting that Guillermo del Toro would have thought that, because not too long after this film came out is when he put out Pan's Labyrinth.
Mm-hmm. I was just thinking of, again, Greek mythology. The labyrinth is where the Minotaur is like trapped. And I feel like Hellboy is a little bit reminiscent of the Minotaur, you know, he's got the horns. And so that's why I was like, oh, labyrinths.
Well, with all of that being said, I think it's time we take a look at some of the reviews for this film. And
so Rotten Tomatoes, we have an 81% from critics and a 66% from audiences.
Man.
And my question is, why is the critic rating so high?
Those are critics mostly, I do believe, from 2004. Those are critic ratings.
I don't know. Like, I don't think this movie was that great. And I feel like generally for like comic book, superhero-y, action-y films, it's the opposite, right? Like audiences usually love it and critics don't. For some reason, we're flipped on this one. But why I find that so interesting too is literally if you go in and read the reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, like even the reviews say the movie isn't that great. Like it'll be like, oh, it's like this great comic book, but then there'll be a line about how it's not so good. Like some of the ones I pulled out are like, the film may not be a thrill by minute entertainment. And another one was like, I couldn't make heads or tails of the story, but yet they're giving it a good review. And like it has an 81%. I don't get it. To me, it doesn't add up. If you read the reviews, it does not equate to having an 81% score.
That is until you read Roger Ebert's 3.5-star review.
Also, I have what was he smoking when he watched this movie? How did Roger Ebert give this movie a 3.5? I want words. I know he's not with us any longer, but I want words.
I mean, his words had many nice things to say about the CGI, Ron Perlman's acting, Guillermo del Toro's skill as a director, and
again, I think he just had a hard-on for Guillermo del Toro.
Which at the time, I think would have been totally fine. And even now, I think we all can still just love Guillermo del Toro, but
I don't know. It's just I don't get why it's so highly rated by critics. I don't know.
I don't think I can give you an honest answer on that one. But yeah, it's interesting. And this is also well before we had, 50 or so different Marvel Cinematic Universe films.
Yeah. Yeah. Now we're kind of
the early days of superhero films.
Maybe that's the problem, Adam. Maybe that's why I don't get it, right? I've been so overwhelmed and diluted with the amount of nonsense Marvel movies that there are in the world that to me this isn't anything spectacular. But maybe if I had seen this is like the first superhero comic book movie I had experienced, maybe I'd have a different feeling about it.
Well, and back then too, superhero films, to see a superhero film with someone in a costume or something like that and some cool effects, that'd be cool. That'd be interesting. Something like Blade is fascinating and that's fun. But that wasn't even so much of creatures and cool effects and things like that. Maybe a little bit, but
there's vampires.
It's there. But then when Guillermo del Toro comes along, then you've got this surplus of costumes and effects and things like that.
Yeah, I'm sure it was amazing to watch it the first time.
Yeah. So I can understand for 2004 that makes sense. And Roger
Ebert has rated way better movies way less, and I'm not gonna get over this. I'm so mad about it.
Yeah. Well, with that being said, I think it's time we go into our slurps up or slurps down. Slurps up meaning that we recommend the movie, we think you should watch it, and we think that it's a good movie. Or slurps down meaning we don't recommend it, we don't think you should watch it, and we think that maybe you should just put this movie where it belongs, back in hell. Laura, what do you think?
I'm really torn right now. I mean, I want to say down, but I feel like I have to say up. So, I I keep going back and forth right now. Honestly, I do not think it deserves as high a praise as it's gotten. I do not think it is the best of Guillermo Del Toro's work. I would much rather watch anything else that he's done, I feel like. But again, I think maybe I'm just like oversaturated and just done with superhero movies, and it's really skewing my view on this one. So I think I'll go with Slurps Up only for Doug Jones.
And for me, listen, I think there are better Guillermo del Toro films out there. I think Guillermo del Toro is like a great wine that is only saturated over time in the best way possible and gotten better and better and better in time. And with that being said, I'm still going to recommend this movie. I'm still going to give it a Slurps Up. And I say that because even if there's doubt in me with this movie, and if there's a part of my body and my mind that thinks, don't watch this movie, I think you should still check it out in support of Guillermo del Toro in learning about his great and wonderful skill, and in support of Ron Perlman's wonderful acting. Even if you watch this and you think, like, what the hell is that demon man doing? Check this movie out. It is cool. It is fascinating to see the growth and development of what our world has done with these superhero films over time. Maybe even go back and watch an old Batman film, then watch Hellboy, and then we can all go watch Guardians of the Galaxy or something, or the freaking Avengers, and be like, damn, we have really expanded over time in our skills. So I would recommend this movie for everything that Guillermo del Toro has done in his filmography, and to see he started around the time with Hellboy. He had a couple before it, went to Hellboy, and look where the man is now. Definitely recommend this movie. Definitely recommend checking out all of the interesting things that are part of it. And with that being said, that wraps it up for this episode of Screen Slurps. Be sure to follow us on social media at Screen Slurps on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. And be sure to listen to us on Spotify, Ghana, or any other podcast streaming service out there. And if you enjoy what you hear, slide on over to Apple Podcasts and give us a 5-star rating. It will help us a lot. And if there's any crazy movies that you want to hear about, let us know. Leave a comment on one of our social media pages, and trust me when I say we will be sure to talk about it. So closing out, I'm Adam Meisner.
And I'm Laura Herlocker.
Slurps up, and we will catch you later.